Hey there, you're watching Book Demystified, and I'm so glad you're here. Today, we're diving into The No-Spend Year by Michelle McGagh, and trust me, you'll want to stick around for this one. Imagine if I told you that you could save thousands of dollars, discover what actually makes you happy, improve your relationships, reduce your environmental impact, and completely transform your relationship with money and consumption, all by doing one simple thing: buying nothing for an entire year. Your first reaction is probably that this sounds impossible, unrealistic, or like some kind of extreme deprivation experiment that would make life miserable. But what if I told you that Michelle McGagh, a successful British journalist, did exactly this and found that her no-spend year was one of the most rewarding, eye-opening, and transformative experiences of her life? She didn't just save money. She discovered profound truths about happiness, fulfillment, and what we actually need to live well in a consumer culture that constantly tells us we need more stuff to be happy. This isn't about becoming a minimalist monk or living in deprivation. It's about questioning the assumptions we make about spending and consumption, and discovering what happens when you press pause on the endless cycle of buying things. By the end of this video, you'll understand why buying nothing might actually give you everything you've been looking for, and you'll have practical strategies for implementing your own version of mindful spending that could revolutionize your finances and your life. Michelle McGagh starts this book by being brutally honest about her pre-experiment relationship with money and shopping. She describes herself as a typical consumer who shopped for entertainment, bought things impulsively, and often purchased items she didn't really need or even particularly want. She had a good income as a financial journalist, but like many people, she spent most of what she earned and didn't have much to show for it, besides a closet full of clothes she rarely wore and a home filled with objects that provided temporary satisfaction at best. The catalyst for her no-spend experiment came when she realized that despite writing about personal finance professionally, her own spending habits were mindless and driven more by emotion and social conditioning than by conscious choice. Michelle McGagh's experiment had specific rules that made it challenging but not impossible. For one full year, she could only spend money on absolute necessities: mortgage payments, utilities, basic groceries, transportation to work, and essential toiletries. Everything else was off limits: new clothes, shoes, books, magazines, coffee shop visits, restaurant meals, entertainment, home decor, gifts, travel, and any kind of discretionary purchase. She could use things she already owned, accept free activities and invitations, and receive gifts from others, but she couldn't spend any money on non-essential items for 12 full months. The first major insight McGagh shares is what she calls the discomfort of awareness. When you can't automatically solve every minor inconvenience or desire with a purchase, you become acutely aware of how often you normally reach for your wallet as a solution. Need a birthday gift? Usually you'd buy something. Bored on a weekend? Usually you'd go shopping or spend money on entertainment. Feeling stressed? Usually you'd engage in some form of retail therapy. When these options are removed, you're forced to find alternative solutions. And McGagh discovered that the alternatives were often better than the spending solutions she normally used. Let me tell you about one of the most surprising discoveries McGagh made: the incredible amount of mental energy that gets freed up when you remove spending decisions from your daily life. She realized that countless times throughout each day, she was making micro decisions about whether to buy something, how much to spend, where to shop, and what to choose. Eliminating these decisions created mental space for more important thoughts and activities. She found herself more present, more creative, and more engaged with the people and activities in her life because she wasn't constantly distracted by consumption-related decisions. McGagh addresses one of the biggest concerns people have about reducing spending: the fear of social isolation and missing out on experiences. She discovered that many social activities don't actually require spending money, but we often default to expensive options out of habit rather than necessity. Instead of meeting friends at expensive restaurants, she started hosting potluck dinners at home. Instead of going to expensive entertainment venues, she organized free activities like hiking, visiting museums on free days, or having game nights. She found that these alternatives often created deeper connections and more memorable experiences than the expensive activities she used to default to. One of the most powerful sections of the book deals with what McGagh calls the stuff reality check.
When you can't buy new things, you're forced to use what you already have. And McGagh made some shocking discoveries about the sheer volume of possessions she'd accumulated without really thinking about it. She found clothes with tags still attached that she'd bought months earlier and forgotten about. She discovered multiple items that served the same purpose, like having 5 different can openers or dozens of pens scattered throughout her home. She realized that she already owned solutions to most of the problems she normally solved by buying new things. McGagh tackles the emotional side of spending with a chapter on retail therapy and emotional spending. She discovered that she often used shopping as a way to cope with stress, boredom, sadness, or anxiety. But these purchases provided only temporary relief and often left her feeling worse than before. During her no-spend year, she was forced to find healthier ways to deal with difficult emotions, including exercise, creative activities, social connection, and simply sitting with uncomfortable feelings instead of trying to shop them away. She found that these alternative coping strategies were more effective and had positive rather than negative financial consequences. Let me share one of the most practical insights from the book: McGagh's discovery of creative problem solving when spending isn't an option. When her winter coat zipper broke, instead of buying a new coat, she learned to repair it. When she wanted to redecorate her living room, instead of buying new furniture, she rearranged what she had and borrowed items from friends. When she craved restaurant food, instead of ordering takeout, she experimented with cooking new recipes using ingredients she already had. These solutions often took more time and effort than simply buying new things, but they also provided a sense of accomplishment and creativity that purchasing never did. McGagh addresses one of the most challenging aspects of her experiment, dealing with social pressure and explaining her no-spend commitment to others. Some people were supportive and curious, but others were skeptical, critical, or even hostile about her decision to stop spending. She learned to navigate these social dynamics by being clear about her goals, not being preachy about other spending choices, and finding ways to participate in social activities without spending money. She also discovered who her true friends were, as some relationships that were primarily based on shared shopping or expensive activities naturally faded, while deeper friendships strengthened. The book includes a fascinating section on the marketing and advertising awakening. When you're not buying anything, you start to notice how pervasive and manipulative marketing messages are in daily life. McGagh became aware of how often she was being told she needed things she didn't actually need, how advertising created dissatisfaction with things she already owned, and how consumer culture profits from keeping people in a constant state of wanting more. This awareness continued beyond her no-spend year and permanently changed how she responded to marketing and advertising messages. Hey, if you're enjoying this and love free book summaries that respect your time and brain, there are a few simple ways to support us. You can hit that subscribe button, become a channel member, or grab the book via our link in the description. And if you're feeling generous, we've also added a PayPal and UPI tip link. Every bit of support helps us keep going. McGagh dedicates significant attention to the environmental impact revelation. When you stop buying new things, you become acutely aware of how much environmental waste is generated by constant consumption. She learned about fast fashion, planned obsolescence, packaging waste, and the true environmental cost of the throwaway consumer culture. Her no-spend year dramatically reduced her environmental footprint, and she realized that individual consumption choices, when multiplied across millions of people, have enormous environmental consequences. This awareness became one of the lasting changes from her experiment. One of the most surprising chapters deals with the gift-giving transformation. McGagh had to navigate holidays, birthdays, and other gift-giving occasions without spending money, which initially seemed impossible. She discovered that homemade gifts, gifts of time and service, and thoughtful gestures often meant more to recipients than expensive purchased items. She made photo albums of shared memories, offered to help with projects or chores, and wrote meaningful letters expressing her appreciation for people. Many recipients told her these gifts were more memorable and meaningful than anything she could have bought.
McGagh addresses the boredom and entertainment challenge. Without the option of spending money on entertainment, she had to rediscover free and low-cost activities. She started reading books from the library, exploring free museums and events, hiking in local parks, and engaging in creative hobbies using supplies she already owned. She found that many of these activities were more fulfilling than the passive entertainment she used to pay for, and they often involved learning new skills or connecting with nature and community in ways that enhanced her well-being. The book covers the food and dining transformation. McGagh could only buy basic groceries, which meant no restaurant meals, takeout, fancy ingredients, or specialty foods. This forced her to become more creative and skilled in the kitchen, to meal plan more carefully to avoid waste, and to appreciate simple, home-cooked meals. She discovered that cooking at home was not only much less expensive, but also healthier and more satisfying than eating out. She also learned to appreciate the social aspect of sharing home-cooked meals with others. Let me tell you about the clothing and fashion reality check. McGagh couldn't buy any new clothes for a year, which initially terrified her as someone who enjoyed fashion and shopping for clothes. She discovered that she already owned more than enough clothing, and that much of what she owned was barely worn. She became more creative with styling and combining existing pieces, learned basic mending and alteration skills, and developed a deeper appreciation for quality items that lasted. She realized that constantly buying new clothes had prevented her from fully utilizing and appreciating what she already owned. McGagh tackles the travel and experience limitations. Her no-spend rules meant she couldn't take expensive trips or pay for costly experiences during her experiment year. Instead, she focused on exploring free activities in her local area, visiting friends who lived in different places, and finding low-cost ways to have adventures. She discovered many interesting places and experiences close to home that she'd previously overlooked because she was always looking for the next expensive destination or activity. One of the most profound sections deals with the relationship impact. McGagh's no-spend year affected her relationships in unexpected ways. Some relationships became stronger as she focused more on quality time and meaningful interactions rather than expensive shared activities. She and her partner had to find new ways to spend time together that didn't involve spending money, which actually brought them closer and helped them discover shared interests they hadn't explored before. However, some social relationships became strained when they were primarily based on shared shopping or expensive activities. McGagh addresses the mental health and well-being effects. Initially, she worried that not being able to buy things would make her feel deprived and unhappy, but she discovered the opposite was true. Without the constant pressure to make spending decisions, the buyer's remorse from impulse purchases, and the financial stress of overspending, she felt more peaceful and content. She also found that the activities she engaged in during her no-spend year, like exercise, creative projects, and time in nature, were more beneficial for her mental health than shopping had ever been. The book includes practical advice about implementing your own no-spend challenge. McGagh recognizes that not everyone can or should do a full year without spending, but she provides guidelines for creating modified versions that still provide benefits. This might include no-spend weeks or months, specific category restrictions like no clothing purchases, or challenges focused on particular spending triggers like impulse buys or emotional spending. The key is choosing restrictions that are challenging enough to create awareness and change, but realistic enough to maintain long-term.
McGagh covers the savings and financial impact of her experiment. By not spending money on non-essentials for a year, she saved thousands of dollars that she was able to use to pay down debt and build savings. But beyond the immediate financial benefits, the experiment taught her to distinguish between wants and needs, to question every purchase decision, and to find satisfaction in non-monetary ways. These skills continued to benefit her financially long after the experiment ended. Let me share the community and connection discovery that McGagh experienced. When you can't spend money on entertainment or social activities, you're forced to get creative about connecting with others. McGagh discovered community resources she didn't know existed, made new friends through free activities and volunteer work, and strengthened existing relationships by focusing on quality time rather than expensive shared experiences. She found that many of the deepest and most meaningful connections in her life didn't require spending money at all. McGagh addresses the identity and values clarification that occurred during her no-spend year. She realized that much of her previous spending was driven by trying to project a certain image or fit in with social expectations, rather than authentic personal values. Without the option of using purchases to express identity, she had to find other ways to understand and express who she was. This led to greater self-awareness and alignment between her values and her actions. The book covers the waste and consumption awareness that developed during the experiment. McGagh became acutely aware of how much waste is generated by consumer culture and how many resources are used to produce things that people don't really need or quickly discard. She learned to appreciate the resources that went into producing the items she already owned and to use things more completely and carefully. This awareness extended beyond her no-spend year and permanently changed her consumption patterns. McGagh tackles the gratitude and contentment development. Without the constant influx of new purchases, she learned to appreciate and find satisfaction in what she already had. She developed daily gratitude practices, learned to notice and enjoy simple pleasures that didn't cost money, and found contentment in experiences and relationships rather than material possessions. This shift in perspective was one of the most lasting and valuable outcomes of her experiment. One of the most important chapters deals with the long-term behavior change. McGagh's no-spend year wasn't just a temporary experiment. It created lasting changes in her relationship with money and consumption. Even after the year ended, she continued to spend much less than before, made more thoughtful purchasing decisions, and found satisfaction in non-material aspects of life. The skills and awareness she developed during the experiment became permanent tools for living more intentionally and financially responsibly. The book concludes with the life lessons and broader applications of the no-spend experiment. McGagh reflects on how the experience changed her understanding of happiness, success, and what constitutes a rich life. She learned that buying things provides only temporary satisfaction, that creativity and resourcefulness are more valuable than purchasing power, and that the best things in life really don't cost money. These insights extended far beyond personal finance to affect her career choices, relationship priorities, and overall life philosophy. Throughout the book, McGagh maintains a tone that's honest about both the challenges and benefits of her experiment. She doesn't romanticize the experience or pretend it was always easy, but she demonstrates through detailed examples how stepping away from consumer culture can provide clarity, savings, and satisfaction that constant buying never could. Her approach is particularly valuable because it's based on real experience rather than theoretical advice. As we wrap up, here's the revolutionary insight that transforms everything. The path to having enough isn't getting more stuff. It's discovering how much you already have and learning to find satisfaction in non-material sources of fulfillment. McGagh's experiment proves that most of what we think we need to buy, we don't actually need at all, and that the things we really need for happiness and fulfillment, like meaningful relationships, creative expression, time in nature, and personal growth, are available without spending money. The no-spend challenge isn't about deprivation. It's about liberation from the endless cycle of wanting and buying that keeps us stressed, distracted, and financially stretched. Whether you try a full no-spend year or just implement some of McGagh's insights into your spending habits, the lesson is clear. The richest life might be the one where you discover you already have everything you need.